Hi, friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Ashley Ariana, joined by the wonderful Steph Sanchez today. And how are you doing, Steph, really quick before we get into everything?
Ooh, I'm good. It's a good day as a 49ers content creator, maybe not so much as a 49ers fan with some of the, reports coming out. I'll let you
Yeah.
get to it, but as we always say, the 49ers are like never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment at all. And as people are joining in, make sure to like and subscribe to both of our channels. Steph, you've been doing sparkling water reviews, and you did some Olipop. I messaged you that you have to do Poppy because I think Poppy is better than Olipop. And you did alert me that they're getting sued, but they're not getting sued because like their product is poisonous or bad. It's because on their label they like really promoted it as more of a gut healthy drink versus
Yeah.
like a healthy version of soda. But I feel like if you're not dumb, you knew that. You know what I mean? Like when you looked at Poppy, it's just like a knockoff soda. Like I like Poppy because you can kind of like it's like a sweet drink that's sparkling. Like I think of it more as like sparkling water or like soda with less sugar. I never like drank it being like, ooh, like healthy. I know it has like some apple cider vinegar, but it's like not enough to make an impact.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll do Poppy just because once I get into like Poppy,
Well,
then that
you
opens things
should.
up for like soda. Like I don't know. It's just like it feels like a
What's
gateway
your
to other
favorite so
things
far
of just
of the drinks
everything.
you've
I um well, I haven't tried it, but or I had tried it before, but I wasn't gonna rate it because it was already my favorite. Is as far as sparkling water goes, is the bubbly pineapple coconut is my favorite one.
tried? Love that. Really quickly, Brother Bob having a crisis within himself potentially. He said, "I'm here. Damn it. I'm really glad that he made it. We actually made it before you, Brother Bob." And then he said, "Huh." So maybe he's also just finding out about the Poppy lawsuit, which has nothing to do with the 49ers, but is critical to my life because I love their sparkling water soda things. And Steph, we got to keep I haven't seen a hair tutorial yet, though. That's gonna be
It's
the
it's coming. I gotta cut my hair first, which I'm getting my hair cut tomorrow, so I'll probably film it either Thursday, probably Thursday. Yeah.
okay. There you go. There you go. Well, today in breaking maybe news, I guess we would call it, Brandon Aiyuk took to TikTok, which still exists. It did get banned, but I think they have like 6 months to try to sell it or change people's mind. I don't really know what they're gonna do. I feel like every year there's been some crisis about TikTok being banned. Um, Now, if you're a regular listener of this channel and my shows with Steph, have kept great tabs on Brendan Ayuk's long-term girlfriend's TikTok because I felt like she was giving out hints since like early or middle of last season. But Brendan Ayuk actually took to his own TikTok. His girlfriend was filming it though. Got on a FaceTime call with Jaden Daniels. Sorry, I'll learn how to
Hmm.
speak it every day, which is the newly drafted quarterback of the Washington Commanders, and basically said the 49ers, they don't want me back, man. I swear. Daniels then kind of almost celebrates. Now, Jaden Daniels has made lots of comments alluding to him and Brandon Ayuk reuniting. For people who don't know, when it was Jaden Daniels' freshman year, I think it was
Hmm.
Ayuk's final year when they linked up and had a good connection at Arizona. So that's how they know each other and have stayed connected this entire time. I mean, this was very obviously staged. His long-term girlfriend Rochelle, who was filming it, said, they're making me film, vlog this. He put it out there to, you know, fans to consume it, for the 49er, front office people to consume it. Now, obviously, the assumption is they don't want me, they being the 49ers don't want me. And uh now he didn't clarify, he said they said this, but did they say this with their words? Aiyuk, we don't want, we don't want to retain you? Or was this a lowball offer? Maybe he feels like their most recent offer was not at the standard he wanted to be. Maybe he made some sort of counter offer. We've heard with a lot of these negotiations that especially that first offer, but the entire process seems to be just a drag out fight. Um, and honestly, for the 49ers, this is not a time yet where I would personally start panicking. They normally don't have deals done by this time in the season. Now, this offseason is particularly interesting because they did get some deals done. One of those not being Brandon Aiyuk. But really quickly, before I get into it a little more, what was just your initial? Did you see that TikTok? It was also going around on Twitter for people who maybe don't use TikTok.
Yeah, I did see the clip. It did definitely feel somewhat staged. I mean, obviously, like Brandon had his partner film this interaction, this FaceTime interaction with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels' reaction looked genuine, and it looked like he hadn't heard that before because Jaden just asked him what's up, and that's when Brendan Aiyuk told him that. Now, as far as the interpretation of, why him using the words, they don't want me back. I am with you. I don't think the 49ers actually said those words. In fact, like Jeremy Fowler over the weekend, I believe it was like yesterday or something, he said, the 49ers do want Brandon Aiyuk long term, which I think is still the case. Now, I do think that the 49ers, though, are standing pat on the price that they want Brandon Aiyuk long term, right? And clearly to this point, Brandon Aiyuk does not agree with that number. Mike Silver had mentioned is $26 million, maybe more or less in that range, right? So Brandon Aiyuk sees himself as one of the top wide receivers. He wants like 30 million, I think is like kind of what we've been hearing. And so, yeah, there's definitely a gap there. And so I don't think the 49ers said, we don't want you back. I think they're just saying, we're not willing to pay you what you're asking for. And, they have no reason to come off of their number. The 49ers don't. I mean, they have all the leverage in this situation. They could simply tell Brandon Aiyuk, play on your fifth-year option. And, like Brandon Aiyuk doesn't have a lot of leverage. He has no leverage, if we're being quite honest, in this situation. And so one way for
that's probably why he's
him,
taking these antics, right?
Yeah, exactly. One way for him and other players to get some kind of leverage at all or create leverage is by putting it on social media, having the fans react to it, and having the fans give pressure to the team, in this case, the 49ers, and seeing what the team then does with that, right? So I think, to me, it was a bit of a Hail Mary from Brandon Aiyuk, just wanting to see if he can rattle up the fans a little bit and get them on his side. Maybe mentioning John Lynch or the 49ers on social media, putting pressure on them to get this deal done. But I don't know if they're going to get, if Brandon Aiyuk is going to get what he wants out of this. I guess time will tell.
It'll definitely be interesting. Really quickly, I loved Rob D's comment. He said he was talking about Applebee's where he worked undercover as a waiter. They don't want him back. I can't remember what like app that was for, but I saw the little video that was on YouTube and it was hilarious. I think you're correct in, I think this is all contract negotiations. I imagine maybe Aiyuk said a counteroffer or tried to either speed up the process or bump up the number in some way. And maybe the 49ers, we did hear from Deebo Samuel, there was a month or more period where he didn't hear from the 49ers at all. Like they kind of had their offer and then they left it. And so maybe it's something like that where, because I remember Deebo talking about this because there was like back and forth on both sides. And then eventually the 49ers, I guess, got to a point where they kind of let it simmer, which I don't necessarily agree with, just making a guy who you eventually hope to play for your team and play well, making him sweat. But it does feel like that is a part of their contract negotiation process. Now, once again, criticizing that process and that can be its own thing. I disagree with how they do it. However, if that is how they do it, I can see that being kind of what's going on right now, and I being mystified, like, okay, they're just going to kind of leave this in the air right now. Obviously, there was reports that Mike Silver put out that the 49ers offered Brandon Aiyuk something like $26 million a year. From and these all are all leaks, but from what we've heard, Brandon Aiyuk wants something a little bit similar to St. Brown's contract, which is more like 30 million per year. Now, guarantees and everything can also be a hiccup. Potentially the 49ers are willing to meet that number, but the guarantee could be less. I don't know. Like I said, I feel like I'm not is it naive of me that I kind of saw this and was like, Debo was, in a club with signs and he ended up getting signed. You know what I mean? Like he has Brandon Yoke hasn't requested a trade yet. Like this is not even the fire is burning in the house as much as we've seen it before. And in that scenario, it worked out. So I still have my belief that it will work out. I think if this was pre-draft, I would feel different. But really, once that draft happened, I felt a lot more security that Brandon Aiyuk was going to be playing on this team. I just if the number one draft picks that they were offered weren't high enough, I don't see them now, trading him for a future first or seconds or whatever. Now Washington does watch for back to the video that he's talking on is with his former quarterback at Arizona State, now Washington's quarterback, Daniels, and he's celebrating. Now, I don't know, does a rookie quarterback have the power to get the front office to go after someone? But also, does he even need that power? Adam Peters is the GM there. Adam Peters probably thinks and feels very highly of Brandon Aiyuk, and the Washington Commanders have about $45 million in cap space. So if they wanted to pay Brandon Aiyuk the money he's asking for / demanding, they definitely could do that. But what do they have to give up that the 49ers would accept is more my question. But
well, also, if they really wanted Brandon Aiyuk, why wouldn't they have made an offer for him during the draft, even day two, right?
They were the team that they had multiple second round picks that people were hypothesizing. They also didn't they have 2 first round picks? They had an early one and then a later one. So I think that they had because I kept hearing different versions of deals that could happen for Brandon Aiyuk with the Commanders and never did. So you're right. It feels like if a team really wanted him. Now, if you're the 49ers, does BA putting this out mean that the offers you're going to get, start getting are going to be lower because teams are going to look at this and think, hey, this is contentious and the 49ers, aren't motivated to retain Brandon Aiyuk and he is unhappy there. So now are the 49ers going to want to maybe up their deal just to start keep the other teams bidding high? Because this does kind of lower Brandon Aiyuk's value, don't you think? The more contentious things are, I feel like the worse it is. When things look contentious with Deebo Samuel, other teams didn't trade for him and he stayed. That same year, no one knew what was going on with I'm blanking now, Eagles wide receiver.
AJ Brown.
That was all under the radar, kept everything behind closed doors. And then middle of draft day, when everyone thought Deebo, because of all the attention, was going to be traded, he was actually the one that got traded in assets for and got paid. So how are you feeling about the possibility with that 45 million that the Washington Commanders come in and get Brandon Aiyuk?
I mean, they can do it, but if it doesn't help the 49ers this year, a trade doesn't make sense. I mean, the only scenario in which I see the 49ers trading Brandon Aiyuk in 2024 is if it's mid-season and their season has kind of gone down the drain a little bit. They've given up on the season pretty much, which I don't see that happening for the 49ers this year. And so, yeah, I don't think what is a pick going to do for them in 2024, which I think we all know 2024 is their last big window, right? As far as we know right now with this core. So why are you going to trade Brandon Aiyuk, hurt your chances at getting back to the Super Bowl if you're not going to get something in return that helps you towards that goal? There isn't anything they can get that can help them towards that goal, unless maybe if it was a player for player trade, which a lot of people, bring that up as an option. It's very rare that those take place. I think especially for players of like Brandon Ayuk's caliber and things like that. So I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I also am lower on it. If there was something like a future second along with a, player that would be able to contribute. I'm not talking, I've heard Darnell Washington guys. No, you want a guy who's like, I think the reason it's so rare is because you kind of want the players to be on equal playing field in order for that to make sense. Because if you're like you're saying, if you're trading away BA now, you need to be getting a guy who you think is going to be as, if not more, impactful in the mission to win a Super Bowl. This isn't at this point in the season, you're not really thinking who's going to be good 4 or 5 years from now, long-term goal, who's going to be a depth piece guy. You need a guy who's going to be, making a difference in the game, because Brandon Aiyuk is a difference maker. Now, when we're talking about that, some of the reasons that you hear about, maybe why the 49ers shouldn't give Brandon Aiyuk $30 million plus a year is the 49ers just don't throw the ball that much. And they already obviously, have tons of guys. They extended or tagged Jawan Jennings. They have Chris McCaffrey, who, yes, is a running back, but also catches balls. They have Deebo Samuel for now. George Kittle, same thing. He's going to be in that show receiver coming up. He also catches balls. And then they drafted Jacob Cowing and Ricky. So do you like how I don't even try to say his name, by the way, anymore? I just feel bad because I say it wrong, and I never know which one is less disrespectful. I do the same thing with St. Brown. I just call him St. Brown, and I call Ricky Ricky, and I just hope that everyone gets what I'm talking about. I didn't need to call attention to it. I bet no one even realized I did that. But what I was saying is they definitely have a lot of options for guys who can catch the ball, and the big argument has been BA doesn't get as many targets as these other guys. Yes, maybe production wise, if you were to extrapolate that, it would be on the same or even a higher level because he's done so well with his limited opportunities. But if the offensive scheme isn't going to change, is it then not worth it to pay some guy or to pay a guy for so little contribution, even if, and I'm mixing up my words now, but what I want to say is it possible to look at that the opposite way? Instead of saying you're not worth it because we don't throw the ball that much, what if that makes him very worth it because every throw is then very important? You know what I mean? Like if you know that you're going to throw the ball 40 times, it's okay if there's a couple drops. If you're going to throw the ball 20 times, those, 20 passes matter much more than the guy who's throwing 40. Does that make sense? I don't think I articulated that perfectly, but
it does though, because like if you look at Brandon Ayuk's numbers in 2023, you have to include the context that he wasn't the team's number one option. He was on a team that was throwing the least of any team in the NFL, pretty much. So yeah, I mean, that definitely puts Brandon Ayuk's stats from 2023 in a different light, because then you look at what he did, the production he was able to, put up with that, and it is more impressive. Like at one point, I'm pretty sure his yards per reception was like 17 yards or something crazy like that. Like it was the highest in the league, right? So to your point, he's making his his catches count. He's
Yes,
making his
that's
whatever
a good
he
way to
brings
say
to
it.
the team, his value. He makes it count.
And, like,
Um,
or
yeah,
really quickly, like, I think the thought process, right, is okay, they're not throwing the ball that much. If you take away, like, with all the guys that they've drafted and the amount of hands that they have, you could take away Brandon Ayuk and someone else could fill in. But the question is that guy who's filling in going to, make the passes count in the same way that Brandon Ayuk did? And no, they're not. So is it actually worth it to prioritize paying those pass catchers highly, almost for the opposite reason where people are saying, oh, like you can only pay them if you're relying on them all the time? Well, it's no, but they need to make sure that the passes that they do throw count for sure. So
yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
people
And
are people are going hard for Steph in the comments. Let's go. Uh,
the live chat's popping. So thank you guys. Make sure you like the video if you haven't yet. Both channels, on both channels.
but so yeah, do you think does that make a little bit of sense? Like if you're throwing the ball less than those catch it or those catches matter more. So maybe actually you are worth that money because if those passes are going to Ricky or Jawan Jennings, like what is the likelihood that they can replace what Brandon Ayuk is doing? So
Yeah, I
maybe in
mean,
that way, BA does have a little bit of leverage. I saw earlier in the chat, Corey Soto was saying BA does, even though it's minimal, he does have leverage. And I
yeah,
don't know if this is where Corey was going, but his leverage is just like, I'm a really good player. I make your team better. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you want to have me on the team and you should utilize me more. And just because I shouldn't be punished for the lack of utilization. Now, I will say also to maybe transition us out of this is the 49ers not only are not saying we don't want you because like I said there's reports that they've offered him 26 million, but also they could be saying we don't want you for that price and we can have you for this 5th year option. Now, I've heard some backlash with the 5th year option that's just not a thing that teams really utilize that much more anymore. Do you think if you had to put a probability on Aiyuk playing on that 5th year option, what do you think that would be? And do you think he would hold out? Because I've heard this discourse. I've been pretty firm on I don't think guys hold out, but I've heard the opposite. And if that was the case, if the 49ers felt really certain that Brandon Ayuk would hold out for the 11 games, just for people who don't know, he can hold out up to 11 games before losing his accrued season. Do you think that then that would put pressure on them? Once again, going back to where his leverage does exist, is it then worth it to trade him if he's going to be off the team for that long? Or is having a really motivated to make an impact Brandon Ayuk at the end of the season actually a good thing? Like maybe in their mind, they're like, I mean, not a good thing in the way, like they'd obviously prefer him to play, but maybe it doesn't bother them that much. Maybe they're like, you're probably going to play. And if and this is just kind of negotiations, like you're just threatening us, but we're going to call your bluff. We think you're going to
yeah,
play. But even worst case scenario, the 49ers front office is their job to consider all scenarios. Maybe they think even if you don't play, it's still more impactful for us to have you ball out for the latter half of the season and into the playoffs than, pay you or trade you. Do you think that they could be pushed to trade him if they thought that he would hold out?
No, I mean I think they are going to call his bluff, and they already are in my opinion, and I think they're going to wait to see if he shows up at training camp. If he doesn't, I would expect around that time if he doesn't show up, they're going to make an effort to maybe try to bridge that gap. But like I said, I don't think they're going to like bend over backwards to make it happen. And so it really is up to Brandon Aiyuk if he wants to accept that or not. Let's just say he doesn't accept, the 49ers adjusted offer right before training camp. And I'm just assuming like that's how it'll go down, right? If he does that, then he'll hold out for training camp. He's going to get fined for all of the practices at training camp that he misses. That's just the tip of the iceberg because once it goes into the season, he'll be getting fined
Even
up the
more,
ass,
yeah.
basically. Yeah. So, which is why you don't see players hold out, right? Because with the new CBA and how all that's, written in their contracts, it makes it very difficult to hold out just because it costs the players so much money. Like it makes little to no sense for them to take it that far. But if they do, they're going to eat that cost. And so that's what Brandon Aiyuk has to decide if he wants to, hold out for the season. He could hold out for the entire season. I've seen some people say, well, he only needs to play in 6 games for it to count as an accrued season. In which case, even if he did that, the 49ers could, still, I believe they can tag him after the year. So they still own his rights at that point after 2024, even if he does hold out. So again, like it just doesn't make a lot of sense for Brandon Aiyuk to take it that far. So I don't really see it going that far, to be honest with you. And you're right. Aiyuk does have some leverage. He's the player that he is. We've seen the wide receiver market, what it is. Based on the market, I mean, Brandon Aiyuk does have a case to ask for 28 million, 30 million. I don't know if I agree with the 30 million number, but, he can make that case if he wants to.
Yeah.
But that's
And he should,
around the
right? Like,
range. He should.
you
Yeah,
imagine that
absolutely.
you're, as the player and as the player's team, you're going to overvalue yourself. Makes that sound bad. You're just going to try to go for the highest amount possible. I would agree that I think like 28. I think the hard thing also that I think it is important for fans to keep in perspective is all these numbers that sound insane now. If they were, say the 49ers want Aiyuk to play on the 5th-year option and then are planning on extending him next year, that number is going to be way higher next year. Like these numbers are only going up every season. So yes, right now that would make him, one of these top players. But in a year or two, that's going to be the average salary. If anything, it's, kind of a reflection of like, damn, they should have tried to extend him last year, which obviously he had a great season even for his standards last year, and there was no reason to do that. But when looking at the Trevor Lawrence deal, I heard someone talking about Trevor and saying that the Jaguars were in a position where it's not, the question is no longer, is this quarterback worth this amount of money? It's, do we want to keep this quarterback and have this quarterback be our quarterback for the long term? If so, it's better to pay them sooner, even if the amount seems high, because if we wait another year, because they didn't have to pay, isn't it only his 3rd year, right? So they could have paid him next year. I think, am I wrong about that?
Yeah,
Maybe I'm
he's
wrong about
25, so I think they could have waited.
that. Yeah.
I don't.
So I think that I don't even think it would have been his 5th-year option. I think that that's like, normally they extend people after the 4th year, but with Trevor Lawrence, they got it done early. And Trent Baalke was, I'm blanking on the guy who was interviewing him, but they were discussing it and basically saying that at this point, the Jaguars knew they wanted to keep Lawrence. It's smarter to pay Lawrence, quote unquote, big money now than pay him the big money next year, because that's going to be even higher. And so with Brandon Aiyuk, I think the 49ers really need to get real with themselves. And I'm sure they've already done this, but just, ask, is this a player that we want to keep long term? Because if we're really negotiating over $2 million, those $2 million are just going to be a given plus another 2 plus, up to another 5 in a year from now type of thing,
But don't you
so.
think they'd be more willing to, like, if let's just say Brandon Aiyuk plays on his 5th-year option, he replicates the type of season that he had in 2023, or even better, like maybe he has an even better year. At that point, Brandon Aiyuk has more leverage in the negotiations. Don't you think the 49ers would be more willing to pay him 30 million plus at that point, just knowing like they have a larger sample size to be like, okay, it wasn't just a 1-year fluke with Aiyuk. we feel good about giving him this money.
Maybe, I mean, and maybe that's their thought process. Even within my explaining that deal, I was kind of saying, well, if they would have paid him last year, like he hadn't had his blow up year yet. So maybe the way they're reflecting on this is like, I'm not saying he wasn't a good player prior, but maybe the way they're thinking it is, he's only had 1 year as like more of a
Yeah.
outstanding guy. And I'm pretty sure it was you and I have spoken about this. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I could be wrong, and potentially I'm not remembering every game, but I don't think I think BA's thing is consistency and being consistently a really good to above average wide receiver. But I don't think I've seen him be that monster beast take over games guy that we've seen from certain players that he wants to be paid like. And I think that that could be something that the 49ers are just saying, I see that you put yourself on this level. This isn't what we've seen from you. And the pushback from fans for that might be this offense doesn't really utilize that type of scheme that would allow him to do that. And I'm sure they're having lots of these conversations. I don't necessarily want to beat this conversation to a dead horse. I feel like one, we kind of have, and two, a lot of what we're saying is almost the same. Like the only thing that's happened is BA put something publicly on the internet. So I think it's, responsible for us to react to it. He wanted people to react to it, whether it was satirical and he just
Yep.
liked to mess with people, or whether it was to put pressure on the 49ers. He didn't put that out there for no reason. Okay, last question before we wrap this up. I was going back to last year when I was talking about how bad it got with Debo, and I was kind of saying, it hasn't gotten to that level yet. Well, there was also a point in that contract negotiation offseason with Debo where fans were very pro Debo and very much wanted the 49ers to pay him and were upset with the 49ers for dragging this out. And for a lot of the fan base, they continued that way, and even once he got paid. But you saw this turning point where it felt like you're doing too much. You're
Hmm.
riling up the fans. It feels like from the leaked reports, the 49ers have made you good offers. You're causing a scene. Like, this is just not professional, maybe. And who knows if that's, I think nowadays what is acceptable and isn't is different because social media is like a bigger deal than it ever was before. But do you see that turning point happening at some point this offseason or already? Have you seen talks of that with the
No.
antics that are
Yeah.
now going on with Brandon Aiyuk?
It's already started. So I mean that happens. It happened with Debo where like fans will turn on the player. They're a diva. Oh, like he should just accept this money, and they start to blame the player for not accepting the low. I don't want to call it low ball because I don't think 26 million is a low ball offer, but it is less than market um value
Yeah.
for wide receivers right now. So yeah, I would say lower offer, right? And so I saw some comments earlier in the chat that were like, oh, like he's being a diva, all these things. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if Brandon Ayuk posting this is getting the response that he wants. Like, I think maybe he wants fans to be on his side and be like, hey, 49ers, like, what the hell? Like, pay BA, that, and that has happened, for other players as well. We kind of see both sides of it, where it's like fans getting mad at the 49ers for not just paying players what they
Yeah.
want, and why is it taking
And
so
I think
long?
that's been the overall narrative for most of Ayuk's contract negotiations. Like, I feel like
It
obviously
started,
I'm not,
I,
a speaker for the fan base, but up until
this,
more recently, I felt like
yeah.
people were more critical of the 49ers for not, locking down a talent. And you're right though. I saw some of the quote tweets of this video kind of being like this again, or like this isn't a good
Hmm.
look, or like I'm tired of this shit type of
Yeah.
deal. Um, which is I just wanted to bring up his comment because he doesn't come in here often, but he was a huge help when I was originally making my channel. So Roscoe is in the chat. Everyone say hi.
Yo, what's
Chris
up?
from Twitter says fans have been conditioned to think like owners. It's wild. Um, yeah, I think, and obviously we don't want to speak for, the entire fan base. I saw people even in here talking about why it made sense for Brandon Aiyuk to be trying to get as much as possible. I think it more so comes down to it's a turnoff to some people to see the negotiations happening. And also I do think there's like a little bit of misinformation where certain maybe older fan bases or older people in the fan base. I think my dad used to think this way and I had to like consistently like tell him this is not how it works, where he'd be like, "Oh, like ticket prices are going to go up." And I'm like, "No, these owners are making billions and billions and billions of dollars. You're not paying the quarterback's money. You're not paying Brandon Ayuk's salary. If he gets 20 or if he gets 40, it's not going to change the ticket prices. What's doing that is Jed York and the TV deals, and way more money than an individual player can get for sure." But yeah, and Rob D, I think this is like a funny analogy of what we were kind of saying. No one likes to see how the sausage gets made. And BA trolling or not, the video was lame. It came off a little, in my opinion, maybe a little
Like you
immature
said,
though, like
staged.
laughing. It just didn't have like a, if I'm Brandon Ayuk and I'm not, and I think something where I can be critical of the 49ers is when this pressure is on you, your brain isn't thinking right. Like these guys are stressed out of their mind. I know it seems corny to be stressed when they're getting so much money, but this is life altering money. This is crazy turning points in their career for these guys that have dreamed of getting to this moment. And now they're in this, either they're being stalled or maybe they feel like they're not being appreciated by this team that they really indoctrinate these young guys into, we're a family, we care about you. And I feel like this second contract area is when a lot of these guys learn, like, maybe we are a family. I'm not saying that's completely BS. I do think there's friendships and stuff, but they learn it above all else, it's a business. And I think that's a stressful time. So I try to not be hard when people do a little bit of corny stuff, because I don't know. I try to think, if I was in that situation, although yes, grateful to be making that amount of money, it's a stressful time. People aren't being coddled maybe in the way that they've been their entire life. You have to think these guys are extremely talented. They've probably been praised and told how much they're worth for most of their life. And this is the first time that someone they look up to and value, these owners and coaches and people that they're playing for, those are the guys telling them, hey, you're not actually worth this. And, this is why, and this is why. And you have to kind of fight for yourself. I think it can be a stressful time. I definitely think in bad taste, but none of these things, I felt this way with Debo too. So I'm not being this way for Brandon Ayuk. None of these things really make me like look at a player differently. I just think it's a hard situation to navigate. I don't know. Maybe the only way it would make me look at a player differently is just if they handled it like really well. I would just be like, wow, that's a really mature person that probably has a lot of support. You know what I mean? But if you do act out or as long as obviously you're not doing anything like horrible, if you're just doing little goofy social media games, I'm like, to me, I'm like, you're just gasping for control. And maybe it just makes it look like you're a little not on your leverage. I don't think it puts you in a powerful position. I will say that. I feel like it makes it look like, okay, like, why do you need to be doing this?
Yeah. I think it kind of tells us where the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk kind of are in negotiations, right? It does give us a sign, because if things were going well, or Brandon Ayuk felt that things were going well, I don't think he'd go to these measures, right? To, I guess, let fans know what's going on, but behind the scenes, or give them some kind of hint. So yeah, to me, I think it's his sort of way of letting fans know, I guess, what's going on, and he's hoping for a reaction, and he's hoping for that reaction to then give the 49ers pressure. So
Definitely. And I wanted to highlight this comment. Kenny says, JJ Watt attended OTAs while negotiating his contract, had a much better year than Bosa, and his holding out nonsense. We've seen these holdouts and contract off seasons just do a number on not just Bosa but Debo and all the guys that have been through this. Whether it's physically, you don't feel like you can go as all out because you're scared of getting injured, or whether it's just a mental toll that am I going to be living here? Am I not? I don't know. You definitely see a little. Brandon Ayuk was also like posting with his brand new car, posting with his brand new house. Like, I think during Debo's off season, he was, posting with brand new clothes, going to all the games. Like there is something about, at least with the 49ers and their wide receivers, these contract off seasons, they get a little bit in that limelight and and I don't even once again think it's their fault, but I just think that things look a little weird in hindsight. And from what we've seen of Debo since then, uh seems like not I don't want to say like regrets that, but he's definitely not, outspoken in that way, trying to make the 49ers look good. It's always kind of interesting if you kind of go hard against the team like all off season and then they re-sign you and you're like, I'm so happy to be here and I love it. That was I liked like Christian McCaffrey. He just didn't say anything, didn't show up. They signed him, and then he's asked about it, and he's like, "Yep, this is the best, and it's good for me to be here." Um, Now the final topic that we're going to end on, just very quickly, Brock Purdy. Trevor Lawrence was just extended, as I was talking about when I was talking about just the value of these contracts going up every year, no matter if you're at an elite level or if you're just serviceable at your job and the team wants to keep you. So my question is, it looks like it's going to be not 50 million that Brock is asking for, but that it's probably going to be 55 to 65 by the time it gets around to Brock's payday next year. Do you think that he needs to do anything spectacular this year to earn that? Do you think the 49ers are um, kind of ready for that contract? It feels like even during the regular season last year, different players that were obviously trying to boost Brandon Ayuk's value. I think it was Trent Williams and Kittle came out and they were like, $20 million man, $25 million man. You heard Jed York when it comes to talking about Brock Purdy, 50 million. Like they throw out these numbers and it's like they don't like even in playing for the NFL, you can't imagine how these things explode the way they are. You know what I mean? Because now it's like, oh, 20 million is a slap in the face. 25 is a slap in the face for wide receivers. 50 million, I don't think Brock is going to want to take that depending on how the other quarterbacks that are about to get paid are going to get paid. Do you think that there's going to be this back and forth negotiation process with Brock Purdy his year? Do you think that that's a deal kind of like Jimmy, they'll get done pretty quickly?
I think it'll get done pretty quickly. Quarterback is the most valuable position on the entire team, right? So in this case, I think it'll be easier because I think it's clear, if the 49ers want to keep Brock Purdy and they believe he's a franchise quarterback, just like they did with Jimmy Garoppolo, right or wrong, at one point they did feel that way, right? And I mean, they paid him his money, made him the highest paid quarterback. They seemed very willing to do that. I don't remember there being any rifts in those negotiations. So I think it's going to be pretty much the same with Brock Purdy. I don't see Brock Purdy being like obviously he's not the kind of guy that's going to be on social media and like sharing anything about how the negotiations are going. I don't think, it's even going to get to that point.
You don't think there's going to be some very obviously staged FaceTime calls going around the social media?
Not for Brock, but like, yeah, it sounds like at least Jed York has somewhat of an idea what it's going to cost to keep Brock Purdy, and given how much quarterbacks are getting in guarantees these days, I think it's going to have to be Jed York that's okay with that, right? And I think he is, and I don't think there'll be much of an issue there. So I feel like that deal won't be quite as tension heavy as some of these other ones have been. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence didn't exceed Joe Burrow in the guarantees, but maybe we could say like Trevor Lawrence, his new contract, he's 25 years old, so also very young, like Brock Purdy. We could say that's the floor for Brock, because Dak is going to be due a contract. Tua is going to get a contract, here soon as well. So between now and next year,
they are
oh,
probably right.
I don't know. I think so. I mean, we'll see, I guess.
I
But
guess
regardless, he's going to get a deal.
It's so interesting, right? It's easier to criticize other teams. Like when I look at that, I'm like, they're not going to win a Super Bowl. But I'm sure that people have the same, thought about Brock. I would disagree with them. I think that there's a major difference. But I hate to bring it back to the BA one, but I just thought this was a really good comment left on your channel by Michael. Hot take: BA holding out is good for Purdy, especially if it goes into the season. This way, we see how Brock Purdy performs without his number one wide receiver. Performs well, we got a real one. If he doesn't, we pause? ? Now, I would say a couple things. I think that Brock Purdy will perform well without Brett. I think this type of test would be Christian McCaffrey. That's my opinion. I think that the way, but I agree. When I said that the 49ers have to consider all options, one of their options in calling the bluff, if they don't extend Brandon Aiyuk and do make him play on that 5th-year option, this is probably something they're thinking. It's obviously not ideal. And I understand this thought process because it's nice to know what you have in Brock Purdy, but that's not how the 49ers are looking at this offseason. They're looking at this as a Super Bowl season, not let's find out about our quarterback more. They're like, we're going to patch this up with as many good players as we can. We want to build this quarterback up to look. They want Brock Purdy to perform better than he should, because that's in the best interest of them, for him to outperform himself. That way they win the Super Bowl. Like, that's their ultimate goal. In my opinion, maybe I don't know, Jed York, maybe owners think differently, but that's definitely Kyle's goal, is to make Brock Purdy not only the best version of Brock Purdy, but look even better than he is. And that's not a diss to Brock Purdy. That's every coach wants to build their quarterback up and wants their star pass catchers to make their quarterback look even better when they make mistakes. However, if they're put into a tough situation, this might be like their default of how they feel about it. Does that make sense? Like, maybe it's not their preferred. They prefer to win a Super Bowl and go all out and have all their stars. But if other things happen, that's still going to be the goal, to win a Super Bowl. And maybe a nice subset of that is getting a look at Brock Purdy without a guy like Brandon Aiyuk. That's kind of how I feel about this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously they would like to have Brandon Aiyuk on the field too, but there's definitely some pros to not having Brandon Aiyuk on the field. I mean, we've already seen it in the offseason programs. It's getting Ricky Pearsall more reps, right? And we've been hearing good things about Pearsall so far in his connection with Brock Purdy. So that's flourishing, right? Without Brandon Aiyuk there. So you can see that as a silver lining. And if it goes into the season, that's not great, obviously, but there are some silver linings to it as well, that we can take from it. Just like this one, you get a good look at Purdy and how he would do without Aiyuk. And I'm with you. I think Brock Purdy would be fine without Brandon Aiyuk. Now, it'd be a little tougher, I think, for the entire offense, but I think they'd be able to move forward without him, especially if what we're hearing about Ricky Pearsall so far does translate into the season, right?
Yeah. And a lot of it will also be pressure on Kyle Shanahan. How are you scheming up the offense to cover for not having a guy like Brandon Aiyuk? I think specifically his deep route and, route running ability and his deep ball ability is where you would see that impact most on the offense. And seeing how the other guys on the team that are rookies impact that will definitely be interesting. Now, I know that you have an obligation kind of coming up pretty soon. And then you also have a show at 4. I think we might pause it here really quickly. Corey says Purdy has to do it again, though. I certainly think so. Now, I'm not, from what it sounds like, Jed York and those guys, if they would pay him now. But I don't think guys like Kyle Shanahan or fans like me are mad that he, has to replicate it. Much like I wouldn't be, horribly upset. Now I hope that BA stays long term, but if he could play on his 5th-year option and prove it again, and then they extended him, I'd feel even more confident about that deal. I feel the same way with Brock. I would hope that he could do it again. And, if there's certain injuries to certain players, which I hope there's none, but I would love to see how he performs with that. I think there's going to be some cold weather games. I'm interested to see how he plays in those. If he can repeat his production, I mean, that's going to be a miracle. Like, because he's done, not a miracle because I think he will, but like, the 49ers are going to feel like they really hit something special. And they already do, right? He's like saved everyone's drops and been incredible. But it'll be, I mean, he was record breaking last year. So I feel like people are like, oh, he just has to do what he does last year. And I'm like, that was incredible. Like people have downplayed how great that was,
That's hard to replicate. I got to be honest. Like that's hard to replicate. I think we need to be honest about that. And I think we need to also be realistic that Brock Purdy may regress statistically just because what he did statistically in 2023 is difficult to do 2 years in a row. Yeah. But there's also room for him to be a better quarterback at the same time. So
without like repeating that statistically, I completely agree. And I think we've made that distinction before with like eye test wise, it could look better, even if the numbers don't necessarily say that. And we'll actually end it with this one because I thought it was like a good last one. And maybe we can elaborate and do more players on a separate show, maybe do our top like 3 or something. But just what comes to your mind, elevator pitch type thing. 2 bars, 1 cave. Stole your idea, Steph. Rating the sodas. Oh, what the? Oh, 2 bears, 1 cave. Is that?
I don't know who that is.
Is that Bill Burr, or not Bill Burr? The guy that does the stand-up comedy without a shirt on.
I have no idea.
I don't know either. Never mind. I'm gonna. Anyways, give Steph her credit, but my current favorite 49er. This is hard. For the longest time, it was Debo. And it's still maybe like just that, like, I don't know how you could experience that year and it just not leave such an impact on you. But I think like longevity wise and representative of like play on the field, and then also seems like such a stand-up guy off the field and is like an excellent representation of like what a 49er is. I was going to say Fred Warner. Jerry Greenlaw is also, someone who has a lot of fire, but I feel like Fred Warner, if I was like a person that worked in the front office, a guy like Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, those are the guys that like are just the epitome of the best guys for you and your team, because they never make the team look bad. They're always going to help the rookies, and they're going to do, perform fantastic, like on their own, even if they weren't great outside of the field. Just on the field, they're incredible. And then the fact that they seem so intelligent, well-spoken, they're able to convey messages and have that leadership outside the field, performance as well. That's why I think I would put Fred Warner. But what is a guy that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I have a favorite right now. I obviously love like all the players, and because there's so many great ones that we have. Like we're the 49ers are an embarrassment of riches when it comes to like players that I think any other team, any other fan would be like fanboying, fangirling over, right? Like the one I fangirl over the most is Christian McCaffrey. Like when I saw him in camp last season, I was like, whoa, like this is the Christian McCaffrey that I am seeing. Like this is crazy. This is crazy right now. So, but I don't really have like a favorite. I guess like I could say Nick Bosa, right? For the obvious reasons. But I don't know. My last like favorite, like true favorite, was Joe Staley. Hard to top that, I think.
Joe Staley,
and then Frank Gore, he was up there too.
There you go. Awesome. Okay, well, everyone, like I said, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We might have an additional show because Marco had COVID on Friday, so we skipped that show. So I might add that in, or it'll just be at the end of the week. And then I also have Tom tomorrow. So make sure to stay tuned in. We'll be, coming up with fun things and talking about any sort of breaking news that happens. Make sure to like and subscribe here and to Steph's channel. She's going to be going live at 4. So, yeah, thank you guys so much and have a good one. Bye.
You guys, peace.